Hello there folks, welcome to Shots Fired Airsoft, and today we're going to be looking at the XYL KM9 Unicorn. Now this is a Nerf blaster. It's in the lower segment of FPS, sub 200. I don't normally dabble in this area, however this was somewhat too good to miss. I've seen a couple of reviews on it, and it looks right up my street, being essentially a small form factor blaster, which really does sort of solve the issue of everything in the sub Nerf class usually being a pistol or a flywheeler such as the Nightingale. I prefer a pump action spring blaster for essentially all FPS levels. However, the pistols being top prime and that don't really do it for me, so this being a pump action, sort of almost like a miniature rifle, more of a carbine sized Nerf blaster, really kind of fits what I would like. It's highly versatile. It is modifiable as well, you can up the FPS, and really it just seems to be a really cool little bit of kit, so I thought we'd get one in, unbox it on the channel. This is the sort of last unboxing we've got at the moment. The firing range has now been cut, so that means that I can get down there and actually do some firing tests of like the big Mod 2 rifle that we've got in, obviously the Vorsk VMP1, and yeah, just looking forward to getting things out. Also that little Mark 23 carbine kit we built, so yeah, looking forward to doing it. However, going to get this last unboxing out of the way. This is a very cool little Nerf gun or Nerf blaster, and yeah, really looking forward to it. So first things first, the box. They've put some effort into this. Nice printing on it. It is a lovely kind of shiny blue colour. There isn't really too much on it, so without further ado, let's get in there. And there we are, and as you can see, we really do get quite a lot of kit in here. There are numerous ways of setting this up, so I'm just going to get into it and we'll start unboxing things. Okay, this is the sort of main receiver, and we have our first spring, and it's really not especially hard, so there is definitely room for putting a heavier spring in this, I would have thought. Let's put that to one side. The actual receiver itself is very nice. It's surprisingly heavy, mainly due to this large metal sort of catch plate in there for the trigger system. And we have a safety, which is sort of on toggle switch, where you'd normally get a firing selector on an M4 pistol, or even a pistol on a slide release on a pistol. That is our magazine release, which is nice and chunky. It is only on the offside, so not ambidextrous, so you can only really do it with your index finger on the trigger. We have a nice trigger guard there, just to give you something to protect anything getting in your trigger well. This is the stock mount, which we'll have a look at in a sec. We have mounting points. Magazine well is nice and slightly flared, which should mean that we get a good, a nice insertion of our mag. Speaking of which, this is the magazine that you get with the Unicorn, and it's sort of like an off-brand Talon mag. So this is, I believe, Talon geometry, which we will confirm in a bit. And this is quite nice because it has a little base plate on it, so it looks a bit more tactical than the standard Talons. And there we go, yeah, so that just sits in there, and the release is a gravity drop, which is nice. Cool, very nice. So I put that to one side for the minute. This is the barrel and plunger assembly. And as you can see, it actually has quite a decent sized plunger. This is a fair bit bigger than something like your S200s pistols or anything like that, which does mean that we should be able to get a little bit more performance out of this comfortably. We have sort of like a injection molded piston assembly, which is no bad thing in something like this. I did say in the Harrier review, it is kind of pointless spending loads of money on having like you know, a full metal internal, especially when you've got you know, performance is aiming for like 220 FPS. You really don't need it. It just costs a lot more money. We have iron sights on the rear of the barrel assembly, which actually obviously will be the rear of the gun when it's fitted, and we have a matching ring sight at the front for aiming. Barrel is quite short in standard form, However, I do see we do have another barrel in there which appears to be longer, so that should give us a bit more. We have an automatic return on the barrel spring, on the the pump prime, which is really nice. And we've got stainless steel hex head hardware, which is always nice to see. We do have a slot in the top where you would normally find a rail, and I think what that's for is you can actually fit a top prime to this. Oh, and we have a floating plunger head. You see that there. But yeah, this is very nicely built. It feels very tough, even though nothing's locked together or anything like that. You can't like squeeze the plastic or anything. It is very very tough, so it should be good for durability. Pump grip mounts on a little Picatinny rail at the bottom with a couple of screws, so that means that you have to put any sort of grip you want on this. However, due to the way the gun or the blaster is built and designed, it does require you to have an offset sort of front grip to get fully back, to allow it to prime fully. It's a bit of a visual gawk in my opinion. However, I do understand that it does overall actually make the blaster shorter, so that is pretty much a good thing in my opinion. And speaking of which, there it is. So that's our pump grip, and as you can see what I mean, that allows your pump grip to sit further forward than it would normally be, which means that you can bring it all the way back without hitting your magazine when you're pumping it, which has happened to me on numerous different blasters, and it does get a bit annoying. So let's just pop that to one side along the pump grip. Okay, and this is not a front grip, an AFG. This is actually for your top prime, I believe. So this bolts into your hole in the top of your blaster, which I'm not going to do this, by the way, because I can't get on with top primes. The whole point of buying this was not to have a top prime blaster. And that slots into the top of the gun, and then that rides backwards on that, like so. And then you have that on the top of the blaster, and you can prime it back like that. Use the top of your blaster to actually prime the blaster. So not something I'm interested in doing. However, it is really cool it's got that inside. Some of these bits are quite difficult to remove, but I guess it means I won't move around in packaging, so that's all right. This is a bit of a weird thing. However, it's nice that they include it. This enables you to use regular Nerf stocks in a sort of underslung position. So that pops in there. And then if you have a standard Nerf stock, say a Raider stock or something like that, this actually gives you a Nerf attachment point to put them on. That's what this weird block is at the end if you're watching this and you're not sure, because you're airsoft, for example. And this locks in with a plastic piece that I believe is in the bag of bits over on the right hand side. The other thing it allows it to do is there's actually a thread in there, and that will allow you to use bottle stocks. So you can get a 2-litre Coke bottle or something that's finished, and you take the cap off and you can screw it into there and actually have a long stock, which is a really cool idea. Do like that. Okay, and this is what I will be fitting to it. This is the top Picatinny rail, so this just goes on over that slot with the moving the top of the action, so to speak, and that will allow you to fit a stationary sight. So that's good for, like, really on something like this where it's going to be lower FPS, you just want like a little red dot, and that will more than suffice. Really nice, all the different options you get in this. We're going to have a brief word about the darts that are in this. This is a Far Eastern blaster, made by, I believe, a Chinese company, and it does come with EPP darts, and these are the darts that are very different to the standard foam darts that you would normally get. These are very hard, very tough, resilient, and they've actually got sucker tips, which is a bit odd to see these days. However, we will have a cheeky little firing with them and see how they perform. The EPP darts for a chrono are normally fantastic, but they do tend to be very light, which does affect their overall performance at range. So we'll see what they're like, especially with the sucker tips. It's going to be a journey of exploration, or a baggie of bits rather. And in there we have some blanking plates for something or other. We can figure that out later. And then there is the bit for locking our Nerf style stock in there. We've got a full set of O-rings, which is really nice, and we've also got some sort of fake tritium for the front sight, which is also really nice, and rear sight. That's really good to see. So we can actually day glow up our sights, and then we have general hardware, pins that hold the dome together, and some look like don't know what that is actually. We've actually got like a spacer in there for something. So yeah, I'll have a look at that. This is the stock, the standard stock that comes with the gun, or the blaster rather, sorry, that is designed to be used with the blaster. So if I just grab that up, you can see we have one go in there, and it just clicks in place. And then there is a button underneath. You press the button, push it in, and it will click again. And it is a 2-position stock. Now, it is supposed to lock in to this 3rd position, so it should lock like that. Oh, it just doesn't quite do it. You can actually see there is a locking. You see that there? There is one there. This stock is slightly too long to do it, so if you wanted it to lock in place down there, you could just trim the very edge off this stock, and it would, if I can release, it would just click in place. So there's a bit of a miss on the manufacturing there, but yeah, when it's fully out, there's obviously nothing on there. That is quite comfortable for a larger player. I am 6'1"-ish, so although it is a small blaster, with it set out on the maximum setting, it's very stable and does seem to supply a good reach to trigger, so it shouldn't be too bad to use. Also, the important thing is obviously being a pump blaster. You really want to make sure that you've got a comfortable reach to your pump grip, because otherwise it can be very cramped, especially if you get up in the spring weight. You need that kind of comfortable long reach. If it's too short, you will get arm cramps and tennis elbow and all sorts of stuff going on. Okay, and this is a spare barrel assembly which comes glued into a dart gate, which I've seen people complain about. However, if that's the way they have to build the blaster, that's the way they have to build the blaster. So yeah, this was a little thing of like controversy when this very first came out. However, I don't think they're expensive. It does have machining on the outside of the barrel, which may mean that we need to have specific barrels for this. However, because it is fairly short and fairly low power, I don't think you're going to have issues with, oh, I'm trying to get 480 FPS out of it. So really, it would be a case of sticking one of the 2 barrels in. This is obviously a longer option barrel in, and fiddling with the springs a bit and seeing what you get, and then being happy. If you want something that's going to do 280 FPS, then buy something that's going to do 280 FPS. Don't try and get something up like this to that, because you'll struggle, especially with the plunger tube size. So obviously this for me is not really an issue. You're not going to be trying 74 different barrels in it, most likely. So the fact that the barrels come glued into a dart gate, which is also the way it mounts in the blaster, because it's the screw hole in the side, and it literally bolts to the outside of the shell. So and we get another mag. That's nice. I wasn't expecting to get 2 mags with this. Also wasn't really expecting to get the longer barrel. However, it's nice to have both. And in the bottom, we do have some brief, what must be said, quite brief instructions for what is quite a complex little package. But however, it is fairly self-explanatory in the way it goes together. Obviously, there is some English on here, but these are mainly in Chinese. That's not the main descriptive parts. But yeah, all in all, a really good little package. And we're going to now stick things together and see what we get. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, we're just going to pop our spring onto that rear guide. We're then going to get our top section, make sure our piston's still in place, make sure it collects the spring, lock it together, and then a long pin through the back, and a short pin through the front. If we are fully lined up, I think we are. Like so. And we are together. That's all there is to it. Those 2 pins, very nice, very thick. There is no slop between the 2 sections, and that is really nice to see. I get our pump grip on the front, and then we can fiddle with any sort of secondary parts. You are supplied with nice stainless steel hardware to do this with, which is very nice to see. So I find these always a bit of a faff. There probably is a better way of putting them on, however I'm yet to find it. Putting it on the right way would be handy. Due to the type of grip this is, I'm going to try and get it as far forward as possible. That should be there. 1 in, 2 in. That's on, pushed into place. And then 2 fingers. There are supplied Allen keys in the packaging. And there we are. Mounted. So nice and light. We do have a perfectly reasonable air seal for the FPS of the blaster. You know, people go mad about air seals. If you have a really perfect air seal on a lower FPS blaster, what that probably means is that you're actually, a lot of the time it can mean that you're actually slowing the piston down when you've got a lower like spring weight blaster. So I've tended to found that having an air seal like this, it tends to be pretty, you know, much spot on. It's about 3 or 4 seconds of air, you know. You don't need any more than that, because the only time you really need an air seal for is whilst the dart's in the barrel. So, you know, the dart's in the barrel for like a couple of milliseconds probably before it gets jetted out the end. So it does enough. Right, so this is kind of like our base blaster. We'll get the old stock in the back, and that will give you an idea of pretty much how I'm going to run it, and then we'll look at some of the other options. So that's it in its totality. Really cool looking blaster. It is tiny. Where's my mag? And there you have it. Oh, a groovy looking little thing. It is tiny. It is minuscule, like as a platform. What have I got to hand? This is a Lynx. Obviously the Lynx is built to be far more powerful. However, you can see that even in this situation, the Unicorn is a fair bit smaller than the Lynx in overall both build and length. It's narrower as well. So that should give you an idea. If you really want to go mad, this is an Artifact Nerf Longshot, which really just doesn't even fit in the same general vicinity. I wonder if this is still working alright. Yeah, that's alright. I haven't used it for a while. But yeah, that is massive compared. So yeah, the thing to bear in mind with this is obviously, like I said, aimed at a lower FPS point, which means it can be smaller, shorter, don't need as much plunger, don't need as much prime. So yeah, really, if you're going for higher FPS levels, you don't want one of these. One thing I will say is that all of these orange bits are actually metal, I believe. So they're like die cast metal, which is really nice. It just gives the blaster a little bit more of a premium feel. Okay, this was a bit faff, so I did it off, sort of off screen, off camera. The blanking plates that come with it, do indeed just fit straight into this port at the top. And what that allows us to do is fit our Picatinny rail for the top, which obviously will now remain stationary, so this will allow you to fit a little red dot sight, etc, etc. So if I just grab a couple of small bolts, I believe that is what the instructions call for. Get her on the deck. No need to go too tight on that front one because it's going to strip out. It's only going to plastic. The rear one you can torque down a bit more because it's going into a brass bush in the body, which is nice to see. And there we are. So this is how I would run it. Picatinny'd up, and it does look really rather cool. Nice and operational. Yeah, a really groovy piece of kit. I forgot my tritium sight bits, and there you have it. So we've got the nice little sort of glow in the dark sights going on now. These sights are a bit too low to use with this rather hefty cheek rise on the stock, so if you try and get down there you'll actually end up with it sat almost on your shoulder to try and line them up. So I do definitely recommend maybe a raised sight on there. But yeah, it sounds marvellous. Very much looking forward to getting to firing it. This will be over sort of like a standard sort of 20-meter engagement distance, which is kind of aimed at hitting, I would imagine. In the sort of full review and the firing test, we will have a little look at all the extra little option parts that come with it. I'll make sure I bring a pop bottle and all that so we can see how that goes. But yeah, overall, really impressed with this. This was about £80 from UK Nerf War in the UK. For that money, for what is essentially a competition grade blaster, I can highly recommend this for the money. Just on its merits of how it's built. It's obviously going to work fairly well. Nerf blasters, you can always tell they're going to work well because they you know, have a decent air seal and all that sort of stuff. The only thing that might let it down is the barrel is a Far Eastern barrel, and the fact it comes with EPP darts in a bamboo configuration may mean it doesn't like sort of full-bodied normal darts. However, if you have to just run it on bamboos, well, that's something. But you know, an increasing number of blasters these days do seem to like the bamboo darts. So overall, very impressed with the build quality, the feature set, and the options that come in the box. Really happy with it. And of course, the other thing being that because the barrel protrudes, you could run a scar barrel. So that is extremely handy. Oh yeah, I've got a Blaster Tech Mark II scar barrel lying on my desk. Looks a bit goofy. Whoops, a daisy. But you can indeed stick that on the front there, and that will give you string centering for your darts. So yeah, all in all, very impressed. So the next videos you see from me will be out on the firing range with all of these blasters and guns, airsoft guns that we've unboxed over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks, and actually doing some shooting, which is nice. So for the first time, we'll be out in the field again. So I've been Ben, thank you very much for watching. It's been a Shots Fired Airsoft video. Goodbye.